Love to hear myself talk. Either that or so that way, one of the things that I kind of figured out last year was that we can turn this so you're not in the video. One of the things we figured out last year, because the question was, why do I record the videos? So one of the things I figured out last year is that if people were gone, just having the work on Classroom can be sometimes it can be kind of confusing because when the teachers are explaining things, that helps you to get the work done. So I figured by putting the videos on there and kind of talking about the stuff that we're doing in class, it will help if you are absent. So that way you're like, well, where did this work come from? Like, what are we supposed to be doing? It'll kind of give you something that you can go back to and say, okay, I understand what I'm supposed to be doing. And then that way also when you come back to class, hopefully you won't feel super lost, especially if you're missing more than 1 or 2 days. So that's why we've been doing the video. So hopefully it's been helpful. I don't know if people have taken advantage of that or not, but hopefully we are. So you can look and see. All right. So our learning goals are going to stay the same as yesterday. I can support the following claim. Remember we talked about what it means to support something? To support means to offer evidence or data to prove your point. Well, this is the point that we're trying to prove. That the development of agriculture was one of humankind's most important innovations. So that's the point that you're trying to prove. And so you're going to use information from our atlas work that we're doing today, information from our book notes to prove this point. So don't just tell me that agriculture is one of the most important things. You got to be able to show me why. Okay? So in order to do that, remember yesterday there were some words that we needed to define. Populate, domesticate, revolution, nomad. You should already have those words defined because remember I told you as we go through class, I'm going to be assuming that you know what those words mean. And so I'm not really going to slow down to explain what domesticate means. But there was one word, agriculture, which was not in our book, which I do want to talk about really quickly. So, agriculture, which we kind of defined yesterday a little bit, but here's what agriculture means, right? To domesticate plants or animals for human consumption or use. So when we think about agriculture, it's domesticating plants, which we don't really think about the fact that at some point in human history, someone had the brilliant idea, wow, instead of me going around and just gathering whatever plants I can find, let me see if I can grow the plants that will help me to survive in a certain area. Right?
Is that exactly what they thought?
I mean, I don't know, but my guess would be that it would be something along those lines of it's really terrible going out trying to hunt and gather up all these plants all the time. If I can grow the plants, then I will have not unlimited, right? But you will have a reliable source. So not necessarily unlimited because if there's drought or things like that, but you'll have a reliable source of food.
Well, how would they keep the animals up?
Well,
I mean, they also do
Animals.
in the same way we kind of keep animals out today. And honestly, sometimes even today, do we keep all the animals out? No.
No.
So that was one of the
My family
things.
does.
That was one of the things that happened. So if we're talking about people that lived a long time ago, that technology was not available to them.
Well,
So
they could
that
do that with the boat.
this is the part where we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? So that's part of the reason they domesticated animals, right? If you domesticate wolves, then you have dogs to scare off animals that might try to eat your crops. So your question is kind of answered in this. And that was a very good question, right? Okay. So when we talk about this, domesticating plants or animals, excuse me. If you are domesticating plants and growing plants, what do we call that job? People who grow crops. Yeah. If you know it, go ahead and say it. Farmers. So when we talk about agriculture, we have farmers. And then what do we call the people who grow animals? Yeah.
Breeder.
So breeder, when we talk about breeders, those are usually, it would be more for the use, right? Because breeders grow animals specifically for specific tasks. And usually when we talk about breeders, we're not growing animals to eat, right? So you think of breeders as stuff like dogs, horses, stuff like that. Yeah, people breed horses.
Is it possible to actually eat a horse?
Yes.
So Zaret, I really need for you to, if you have questions like that, go ahead and write them down. Because just because it comes in here doesn't mean it needs to come out here, okay? Because if you were listening, we said that breeders don't usually breed animals for human consumption. It's for use. So if we're thinking about horses, it would be more for a use than eating. So that would be a question that's a little bit distracting right now. So that would be a question right now. Yes, ranchers, right?
Wow. Yeah.
So, oops, that's a terrible
I
one.
actually used to be there.
So, farmers and ranchers. Important thing to remember. These are kind of more modern day terms. So when we're talking about people that lived 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years ago, when people were first kind of figuring out, oh wow, I can grow food instead of foraging for it, they weren't considered farmers and ranchers because these are people who grow large amounts of food for others to eat as well. So back then, when agriculture was first starting, it was small bands of people, small groups of people who were just growing enough crops for themselves, who were just domesticating enough animals for themselves. They weren't trying to trade yet. They weren't trying to trade their grain for other things. They weren't trying to trade their animals for other things. They were domesticating plants and animals for them to eat, for them to survive. Okay? So we didn't call them farmers and ranchers back then because they weren't growing it for other people. They weren't growing it to create a surplus, which is something that we'll talk about later. Okay? So this word agriculture is super important because that's what you're going to be talking about here. Yes, quickly.
I don't know how long ago this was, but in Japan they had rice kingdoms, which were one guy grew a ton of rice and other people kind of lived nearby. And the person used rice and sold it, and then they were like a small king, even though they didn't rule the entire country.
Yes. It was called a shogun, right?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So, yes, and that's going to be a little bit later. That's something we'll learn about later when we get to the Asian cultures. But that's going to be even in the common era time. Okay, so here's how today is going to work. You have an atlas assignment that we are going to be doing. Excuse me. You're fine. This atlas assignment focuses on early agriculture. Okay. Would you mind passing one of these to everybody? Thank you. So you're going to be getting a worksheet here. You are going to use pages 8 and 9 in your atlas. Now remember, I told you the atlases are kind of old. I put a digital copy of these 2 pages on Google Classroom, so it might be easier for you to use the digital copy to get your stuff done. Now, here you go. I'll take that. This packet is 2 pages. Well, it's 1 page front and back. As you answer these questions on this worksheet, remember your learning goal. So don't just answer these questions to answer them. I want you thinking about how can the information in this packet help you to prove that agriculture was an important innovation. Okay? So, yes, you're answering these questions, but like I said, in your mind, don't go to autopilot and just answer them. As you're answering each question, think about, can I use this to help prove that agriculture was important? And if so, how? Because remember, your assessment piece is going to be to answer this question in a written response. Okay? I am going to give you 20 minutes to work on this. If you don't finish this, you either need to finish it in FPC or for homework. In about 20 minutes, we're going to get back together. So I see 3 questions. Yes.
Oh, can I get another book because this one's.
All right, so if it has the pages you need, go ahead and keep it. If it doesn't, put it on the shelf over there.
What
Yes.
pages do I need?
If you look at the directions on here, it will tell you. Yes. Yeah. All right, so if there aren't any other questions about the work, you will have 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, we're going to be getting back together. So I forgot, we're supposed to be recording this. So there's an ed puzzle that you will be watching. For those of you that are at home, you'll watch this on your own using Classroom. For those of us here in class, we'll do ed puzzle live. So in just a minute, what you all in class will do is go to Classroom, and there's an ed puzzle. You're going to click on that ed puzzle in just a moment. Once you click on that ed puzzle, it will tell you, it will say like something like you need to log in or you were in with the class. Okay. So with this ed puzzle, there's going to be spots where it'll say like notes that you need to write down. In class, we're just going to take a look at the video. You will go back through and get your notes written down because I want to make sure we have enough time to look at the entire Cornell Notes video. Okay. So we're going to start the video in 1 minute and 30 seconds. If you go to Classroom now and click on, it's not the assignment at the very top. It's going to be the second one. It's going to be this assignment that says Ed Puzzle, copy of how to take Cornell Notes. So again, for those of you who are at home, what you'll do is you'll go to Classroom, you'll click on the Ed Puzzle, how to take Cornell Notes, and you'll go through that at your own pace. You want to write down all the spots where it stops and it says notes.